Hi, it's Anthony from CarPlayLife.com, and today is the day I've chosen to replace my Alpine aftermarket stereo with the Dasaita VIVID 10 that I reviewed previously on the channel. I'm a little nervous. I don't know what I'm about to expect. We'll be going through this together. So I have done a car install before, but it was decades ago. It was an old Pioneer stereo and a subwoofer in the back of a Citroen Saxo. It was pretty straightforward, but this is a lot more complicated. Cars over the last couple of decades have really advanced now, so I'm a little bit worried about how everything all gets connected. But I've got the Dasaita VIVID 10 coming in and replacing the Alpine, so the install is going to be a bit different to if you're coming in from the stock VW system, because the wireless harness and things like that will be based on the Alpine and however they've installed it. I didn't really see them install it, and I'm gonna have to deal with that as well as connecting it to the new Dasaita. So let's get started. First things first, I've got to take off all the facia panel, so you see me do that first, and then after that we'll see what the dealio is in terms of getting the stereo out itself before we connect up the harness and things like that, and make sure that we've got everything all connected. So let's get cracking. Alright, so that's the actual unit out. So you've got a couple of connections here on either side for the button controls, and then we're going to have to unhook this from the fascia by unclipping these little clips here at the top, and that will take this main pit out, hopefully, and we can then take it away from the Alpine system. Okay, so it turns out it's nothing to do with those screws at all. It's out. Right. So that looks like a dab aerial to me.
A few moments later.
Right, day one. I knew I won't get this all done in a day. I've really had problems with the harness caught behind my interior. I think that's possibly how Alpine have tucked it underneath. Scratched my hands so much to try and get this harness out, and I've basically given up for the day. I'll tackle it tomorrow or over the weekend and see if I can get this Molex out, because if I can't get this out, I really can't plug in the actual harness that comes with, and I've got something this big down the side of the interior. So this has taken the longest thing to get out of the car. Everything else came out quite successfully. I didn't need the actual keys to release the Alpine. They came out totally fine. And the majority of the leads are now in the back seat. I've just got a couple of leads that are still connected to the harness that I still think are related to the Alpine. And then once I've got this harness out, I can then see what cables are actually existing VW and ones that actually came with the Alpine unit, because the idea is that I might sell the Alpine unit on. Obviously I need everything that came with it originally, and unfortunately the manual doesn't list anything to do with the cables that you meant to get with it, so that's a little bit frustrating as well. So I'm a little bit defeated. I really wanted to at least get the cables sorted, or at least power it up using the car power and go from it that way, but unfortunately that's not the case. Right, day two. I've come back into the car to give it another stab at taking this wireless harness out. Having looked at the Alpine YouTube video of the install itself, it turns out that there is a big part where you have to take off the interior side panel of the center console and also unscrew the glove box. I'm not really quite confident in doing that, but if that's the only way of actually getting around to getting this harness out of the side compartment on the inside, then so be it. So I've gone on Amazon and ordered a interior removal kit, and I think you need this one here to get at the center console, and there's one or two others that I can use to preen the rest of the bit out. So let's get cracking and see if we can get at this wireless harness that's inside the center console. So left side panel is removed. Got a clip on the far edge that you have to wean out. Then you do it again about halfway, which is at the end of the glove compartment here, near the handbrake switch, and then again roughly around about here, and then you've got to take two out the side here on the side, and then it all sort of levers off. Right, so I've got at all the screws for the side compartment. can see here. So bear in mind this is the left-hand drive with the fuse box, so be a bit wary about that. I had to disconnect the interior side light. You also have to get out this side panel here to remove a screw from the side here. I can just hang loose. And then here is the little swine harness that I can get out now and unplug, and then hopefully make a start on the other bit of install. Right, a very short day 2. It's now day 3. Short day 2 because I ran out of light. I managed to get the side trim of the center console out fairly easy thanks to the tools that I had. Thanks again to the Alpine installation video, I managed to get the glove box out completely, and then that exposes the side compartment that I was unable to reach on day 1. That also involved taking off the side panel where the passenger airbag lock is, so I unhooked that, and then I also unhooked the side internal lamp from the glove box. That was also removed. There's 3 screws in the glove box at the top that you have to undo on the inside, 2 on the bottom on the outside, and then there's 1 very long screw. It's almost a foot deep, so you have to have a very long screwdriver right at the very back that you have to unscrew as well. And then finally at the side panel there's a screw there that you undo, and then the whole thing will then come out. It will rest on the hose that is connected to the aircon for cooling the glove box. You have to unhook that, and once you've done that, the whole thing will come down off 2 little latches on the lower end. It leads back. So now I've got access to the side panel and that nasty harness. I don't think I ever would have been able to pull that through, if I'm honest. It's a big bulky thing, but luckily the Dasaita harness looks exactly the same, so that looks like it's going to be simply plug and play. These spare cables I don't think I'll be using. There's 2 key and 1 antenna continued. I don't think I'll be needing those. There's also a USB connector for potentially newer VWs. It doesn't relate to mine because I haven't got a USB connection like this, so I won't be using the aux in for this. There's no aux actually in points in the stereo itself, so we won't be using that anyway. And we won't be using this USB lead either because that's technically connected to that one there, so we won't be using that. That won't be live, so we'll just be connecting that to the back of the head unit. Got a CAN bus already connected, so I think all this is going to have to go back in the side compartment. But before I do that, I'm going to connect everything out, make sure everything all runs. I did find a few things at the end of the day that I just quickly ordered for today, so hopefully that will come today and I'll be able to finish the install. The first is the DAB module that I got. It comes with a aerial, which I don't really want to fit because you have to go all through the upper interior. I don't fancy doing that. So I've ordered a special cable, 2 actually. The first will go into that socket there. It'll be screwed in. And then this will go into the head unit. And the other end will go into one of the 3 separate cables that I've got left over that are actually from VW. We've got the antenna cable. That will simply connect to this, which you get with the Dasaita. These 2 ends will go into the white connector of the FM aerial, or at least I hope. And then this end goes into the stereo. The next one is the GPS. That is one of these, which I've ordered from Amazon, going into a screw connection. I'll put down below what the actual terminology is, or even the link to the product. That screws into there. And finally, there is the DAB aerial. That's one of these. This is the one that's from Alpine, so I'll need another one of these. That connects to the OEM connector, and the other end will go straight into the stereo itself, again via the screw method, similar to this on the back of the head unit. So 3 connections plus this big bad boy, and then we should be fully up and running. One additional thing, I'm going to reuse the USB cable that came with the Alpine. It's normally an optional accessory if you want to use the CarPlay through the existing Glovebox USB. If you've got that already, then no problem. But for me, I had the MIB and it didn't have a USB, it just had auxiliary, I think it was. And Alpine installed this cable along with the module for it on the back. So I'm going to use that existing. I'm going to connect these back to the back, and then I'm going to plug these 2 ends, use this one which is dedicated for CarPlay, and connect this USB, and the other end of this aux in will go into that. I'm going to connect up the system first, test them all out and see which ones I'm going to go with. But that's the plan. So I can use my existing CarPlay port in the compartment at the bottom, And I've also got auxiliary should I need to sell the car and people want to use the auxiliary port as well. That's a nice value add if I were to sell the car on with this system installed. Right, lots to do today. Hopefully these two cables that are coming, near identical, will arrive today. And with that, I can then finish the install. But first things first, I'm just gonna connect up the power without the antennas because I've got to wait for two of those to arrive. All right, back in a bit once I've got a few things connected and we're potentially up and running in a sort of provisional way.
A few moments later.
Right, so we're going to start up for the first time. Wireless connected FM. There is a problem with that. I'll explain that in a minute. But let's see if this actually turns on. Okay, we've got power. Gonna have to start the car. Right, another day, and I've got all the cables I need. I've basically had to replace all the 3 cables that VW leave behind that you need to plug into this stereo. Unfortunately, all the cables that they give you for at least the VW7 2013 edition, they all need replacing. So just to go over the ones I actually replaced. So we've got a replacement for the FM. The ones that they give you are 2 separate ones and you can't put them into that socket. Unfortunately, you have to buy one that's combined together. That was about £8. That plugs into the aerial socket there. And then we had to get 2 of these ones here, which go into the existing, this is the GPS cable that goes into the GPS antenna. And then finally, you've got the DAB aerial if you've got it, another connector, exactly the same. And that goes into the DAB module, which you do have to buy. I've taken this up, stop the screw from unscrewing. These are pretty much very sturdy and clipped in. Same with this one. These just clip in, so it stops it from coming out. So these don't really need to be taped up, but I've taped up all the auxiliary stuff so they don't short out or rub against each other and create a electric field. Done that. And the AV cable I don't need either. And then I'm starting to tie all this together so that it all goes back inside that cubby hole. And then finally, as I've got the air thing open, I'm going to wire probably a meter long USB-C cable for power to my docks. Most of them come now with USB-C, so I've wired this to come through into the air intake and then out through a very small bit of sponge that's in there, and then it comes out this side, down the back, and then it will come out of here, and then I'll run it all the way along inside the internal so it's all nice and neat. And the same thing will be for my dash cam. I've already got it all the way down here, but once it comes in here, I sandwiched it along this part here, which I'm not going to do now. I'm going to actually put it through the center, and it will come out the back here, and then it will again go along inside here if there's room, and hopefully be a nice, neat, no cables hanging out on the center console. All right, let's get taped up, start putting all this back together again. Also, don't throw away your trim. You'll need this. So this re-clips back in over the top, and then the air intake goes back in, so it all clips back in together, hopefully. Unfortunately, these clips are pretty brittle, so bear in mind. Luckily, a few stayed put, but I think that's down to how forgiving this is when you actually slide it all in. So best to do it all evenly as you sandwich it in, and then hopefully you don't break any of these clips like I have.